Welcome to my channel Bookish English 2, my friend. Have you ever felt something in your heart, but you can't explain it? A strange feeling. Not pain, not joy. Something sweet and sad. Maybe that's love. Maybe it's something else. Today, I will tell you a story. The first story of love. A story of a young heart. A story of change. A story that will help you learn English and understand your own feelings too. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt something you couldn't explain? Chapter 1. The Game at Midnight. The room was quiet. The guests were gone. Only two men sat near the fire. One was the host. The other was Vladimir Petrovich. The clock on the wall said midnight. But they didn't want to sleep. They were talking. They were remembering something important. The host smiled and said, "Let's play a game. Let's tell the story of our first love." The other man laughed. "That's a big game," he said. "Love is not a story. It's something you feel deep in your heart. Something that never leaves." The host looked at him and said, "Then it's your turn. Tell us." Vladimir Petrovich was not a young man now. His hair was turning gray. His eyes were calm but tired. He didn't speak right away. He looked into the fire. His face became serious. "My story is not a normal love story," he said slowly. "It is not beautiful, but it is true." The host listened, but Vladimir did not begin. He stood up and said, "I cannot say it with words. I will write it in a notebook. Then I will read it to you next time." The host agreed. They shook hands. And that night, Vladimir went home, sat down in his room, and started to write. He wrote with his heart. He remembered everything. The days, the feelings, the faces, the joy, the sadness, the pain. He didn't want to forget. He wanted to give it a voice, so it could live again, and so he could finally say goodbye. "I was 16 when it happened," he began. "It was summer. The sky was blue. The air was soft. I lived in Moscow with my parents. We had a house with a garden. The garden had tall trees, flowers, and a small fence. It was quiet. I had no school that summer. I had no job. I had no plan. I only had time. I used that time to walk. I walked in the garden. I walked near the river. Sometimes I took a book, but I didn't read it. I looked at the sky. I listened to the wind. I waited for something. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I felt it was coming. My heart felt heavy, but in a good way. I had a strange sweet pain. I was not sad, but not happy either. It was something in between. It was the feeling of being young. My father didn't talk much to me. He was always busy. My mother was kind but quiet. I was their only child, but they didn't watch me closely. I could do what I wanted. I had a horse. I liked to ride fast. I liked to feel the wind on my face. I imagined I was a hero in a book. I liked to dream. I didn't know who I was yet. I was only beginning. One day something changed. The house next to ours was empty. But now someone moved in. I saw a woman in the window. My mother asked the servant, "Who are they?" He said, "They are the Princess Tsayaakin and her daughter. They came in rented carriages. They have little money." My mother said, "A princess with no carriage? That is strange." But I didn't care about the carriage. I only wanted to see the daughter. I didn't know her name yet, but I saw her face once through the garden fence. That one look was enough. She had golden hair, big gray eyes, a playful smile. Her voice was like music. She was laughing with other men. I was too young to go close, but I was old enough to feel something. My heart started to beat fast. I didn't know her, but I wanted to. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was not a child anymore. Something new was in me. A fire. A storm. A light. I felt awake even in the dark. I wanted to speak to her. I wanted to be near her. I didn't know what love was. But maybe this was it. I was afraid. I was excited. I was confused. But I was alive in a new way. That is how it began. Not with words. Not with a plan. But with a look. A smile. A summer evening. A feeling that touched my soul and never left again. Chapter 2. A summer of waiting. The days were long. The sun stayed in the sky for many hours. The light came through my window every morning. I opened my eyes slowly. I listened to the birds. I stayed in bed for some time. I didn't want to get up. I didn't have any plans. I didn't have any school. I didn't have any work. But I was not bored. My heart was full. Full of something new. Something soft. Something strong. Something I didn't understand. I was 16, but it felt like the first year of my life. I lived in a big house. It had a garden. In the garden, there were many trees and flowers. Some trees were tall. Some flowers were small. The garden had quiet corners. I liked to walk there. I liked to sit on the bench. I liked to think. I didn't think about big things. I didn't think about the world. I thought about myself, my own heart, my own feelings, my own thoughts. I waited for something. I didn't know what. But I waited every day. Sometimes I took a book with me. I liked books. They were my friends. But when I sat on the bench, I didn't read. I held the book in my hands. But my eyes were not on the page. My eyes looked at the sky, or the grass, or the wind in the trees. My mind was full of pictures. I imagined a girl. I imagined her face. I imagined her walking next to me. She didn't speak. I didn't speak. But it felt good. It felt right. I smiled. And then I looked around. But she was not there. Only trees. Only silence. I had a horse. A brown horse. Not too big. But strong. I liked to ride fast. I didn't use the roads. I went across the fields. I didn't follow the path. I just followed my feeling. I liked to feel the wind. I liked to see the sky above me. I liked to be free. When I rode my horse, I felt brave. I felt like a knight. A hero from a story. A man with a sword and a heart full of courage. But when I stopped the horse, I remembered I was not a hero. I was just a boy who was waiting for something to begin. My parents let me do what I wanted. My father was a calm man. He didn't smile much. But he was never angry. He gave me money. He gave me food. But he didn't give me love. My mother was often sick. She stayed in her room. She didn't talk to me. I didn't talk to her. We lived in the same house, but we were like strangers. I had no brothers. I had no sisters. I was alone. But it didn't feel bad. It felt peaceful. It gave me space to dream. And then, one day, something changed. A small thing, but a strong thing. It was just a look. Just a smile. Just a girl behind a garden fence. But it touched something deep inside me. I saw her from far away. She was talking to some young men. She laughed. She moved her hands in the air. She touched one of the men with a flower. They all laughed together. But then she turned her head, and her eyes looked at me. Only for 1 second. But that 1 second stayed in my mind for hours. After that day, everything felt different. I still walked in the garden. I still held my book. I still rode my horse. But something was added. A feeling. A light. A hope. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted to know her name. But I didn't have the courage to speak to her. I stayed near the fence. I waited. I watched. I hoped. But I did nothing. I was afraid. She was older than me. She was beautiful. She was full of light. I felt small. I felt weak. I felt lost. Every day I said, Today, I will speak to her. But I didn't. I waited for a chance. But I didn't take it. The summer moved slowly. But inside me, everything was fast. My heart was beating more. My dreams were stronger. My thoughts were louder. I wanted to understand what was happening. But I couldn't. It was new. It was strange. It was beautiful. It was painful. But I didn't want it to stop. This was not just summer. This was something else. This was the beginning of love. This was the beginning of change. Chapter 3. The Princess Next Door. It was a normal day. The sun was high. The garden was quiet. I walked slowly near the small fence. I liked to walk there now. I didn't tell anyone why. I just walked and hoped. Maybe I would see her again. Maybe she would be near the window. Maybe I would hear her voice. I didn't want to go too close. I didn't want her to see me looking, but I couldn't stop my feet. They always took me to that same place. Near the fence. Near the house next door. The house that changed my life. That house was old. It was small. The paint was not new. The wood was dark. It looked poor. My mother said, "That place is not for people with a name." But the woman who lived there had a title. She was a princess. Princess Tsayakin. That was her name. She was not rich. She was not young. But she was still proud. She had a daughter. That was the girl I saw. That was the girl with golden hair and silver eyes. The girl who made the air feel new. The girl who made the sun warmer. The girl who made my heart open. I didn't know her name yet. But I knew her voice. I knew her laugh. I knew the way she smiled when she played. She was different. She was not like the girls I knew. She didn't walk quietly. She didn't hide her face. She laughed loud. She moved fast. She made jokes. She played games. She was full of energy, full of life. And the young men around her, strong, smart, proud men, they looked at her like she was a queen. And maybe she was. A queen of hearts. She ruled my heart without even knowing my name. My mother didn't like the princess. She said, "She has no money. She wants help. She is not like us." I listened, but I didn't agree. My mother saw an old woman and a small house. But I saw something else. I saw magic. I saw a world that was new to me. A world where feelings were bigger. A world where your heart could fly. My mother didn't understand that world. She was busy with dinners, clothes, and long letters. But I wanted something more. I wanted fire. I wanted color. I wanted her. One day, I saw something that stayed in my eyes forever. It was evening. The air was soft. I walked to the fence. I looked across quietly. And there she was, on the grass. Her dress was pink. Her hair was light. She held small flowers in her hand. Around her were 4 young men. They laughed. They let her touch their foreheads with the flowers. She touched each one gently. And they smiled. They waited for their turn. Like little boys. She was having fun. But it was more than fun. She had power. And she knew it. I stopped walking. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to break the moment. I just watched her. I watched the way her hand moved. The way her eyes sparkled. The way her smile came and went like the wind. I forgot about myself. I forgot about my book. I forgot about my name. I only knew one thing. I wanted her to see me. I wanted her to laugh with me. I wanted her to touch my forehead too. But then, someone saw me. A man near her looked at me. He had short black hair. He smiled in a strange way. "Hey, young man," he said. "Why are you staring at the girl?" My body froze. I couldn't move. I felt red on my face. I felt like a thief. The girl turned her head. Her eyes looked into mine. Big eyes. Gray. Shining. Her face changed. She laughed. Her laugh was not cruel. But it was strong. Like a wave. It pushed me away. I ran. I didn't want to hear more. I ran to my room. I closed the door. I fell on my bed. I covered my face. My heart was jumping. I didn't know if I was happy or ashamed. I didn't know what I felt. But I felt something. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her face. Her eyes. Her laugh. Her flowers. I felt a strange joy. And pain. At the same time. I smiled. I closed my eyes. I said her name again and again in my head. Even though I didn't know it yet. I didn't know who she was. But I knew one thing. I wanted to see her again. And the next day, I knew I had to find a way. Chapter 4. The First Glance. The next morning, the world looked the same. But I was not the same. The trees were green. The flowers were still open. The sky was still blue. But everything had a new feeling. Everything had a secret light. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't care. I only had one thought in my mind. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to see the girl from the garden. The girl who laughed. The girl who looked at me. The girl who changed my world with just one glance. I walked outside. I walked to the fence. I didn't walk fast. I didn't walk slow. My feet were moving, but my heart was already there. My eyes searched the windows of the little house next door. Were the shutters open? Were the curtains moving? Was she there? Maybe she was sleeping. Maybe she was laughing again. I looked and looked. And then I saw something move behind a glass. My heart jumped. Was it her? I wanted to walk away. I wanted to stay. I didn't know what to do. I walked back and forth. Up the street. Down the street. I didn't want her to think I was watching. But I was watching. I was watching every shadow. Every light. Every window. I was afraid to see her. I was more afraid not to see her. Then I heard a voice. Not outside. Inside me. The voice said, "Go. Go and speak to her." But I didn't move. I couldn't move. I only waited. Fate helped me that day. When I returned home, I saw something in my mother's hand. It was a letter. The paper was cheap. The words were not clear. But the name was Princess Sasayakin, the girl's mother. She wrote a letter to my mother. She wanted help. She wanted to speak with someone. My mother was confused. She didn't want to reply. She didn't want to write a letter in French. Her Russian writing was not good. She looked at me. "Go to her," she said. "Tell her I will see her tomorrow." My heart opened like a flower. I tried not to smile. I said, "Yes, Mother," and left the room. I didn't run. I didn't walk fast. I walked like a man on a mission. I felt brave. I was going to see her. I was going to speak to her. Even if it was only a few words. Even if she didn't remember me. Even if she laughed again. It didn't matter. I would be near her. That was enough. I arrived at the small house. The paint was still old. The door was still broken. But to me, it looked like a palace. I knocked softly. A servant opened the door. He was old. His face looked like stone. He didn't smile. He said nothing. He just pointed. I walked in. The room was dark. The furniture was simple. The walls were empty. But I didn't care. My eyes were looking for her. Then I saw the princess. The mother. She sat on a chair. Her hair was not covered. Her dress was green. Her eyes were small and black. She looked at me like I was not important. I gave her my mother's message. She nodded. She asked me my name. I answered with a quiet voice. She looked at me again. "You are very young," she said. I didn't know what to say. I stood still. Then, the door opened. And she walked in. The girl from the garden. She didn't walk slowly. She didn't walk fast. She walked like a dream. She wore a simple dress. Her hair was tied back. But her eyes, those eyes, were bright. Alive. She saw me. She smiled. Not like last time. Not loud. Not strong. But soft. Gentle. Like a secret only I could hear. My heart stopped. Then it beat faster. Her voice came like music. I saw you yesterday, she said. You were watching. I didn't know what to say. I said yes. She laughed. A soft laugh. Not cruel this time. She said, "Will you help me with some wool?" I followed her to the next room. We sat together. She put a red skein of wool in my hands. She began to roll it slowly. Her fingers moved like magic. She didn't look at me, but I looked at her. Every second, every breath. She asked questions. Do you live next door? Do you ride horses? How old are you? I answered all. I tried to sound calm. I tried to sound like a man, but I felt like a boy. Then she looked at me. A deep look. Into my eyes. Do you like me? She asked. My heart stopped again. I said yes. She smiled. Good, she said. Then we will be friends. That word, friends, felt both sweet and sad. I didn't want to be her friend. I wanted to be more. But I said nothing. I just held the wool. And so, that was the first time I saw her up close. That was the first time I heard her voice near my ear. That was the first time I felt the heat of her eyes, the softness of her smile, and the storm inside my heart. That was the first glance that changed my life. Chapter 5. A Letter and a Visit. That evening, I didn't sleep. I lay in my bed. The room was dark. The moonlight touched the wall. But my eyes were full of her face. Her voice was soft in my ears. Her smile danced in my mind. I didn't know what was happening to me. I had met girls before. In school. At parties. But this was different. Zenaida was different. She was not just beautiful. She was full of something I could not explain. She was strong and soft at the same time. She spoke to me like I was a child, but she also looked at me like I was important. I felt confused. But I didn't want to stop feeling this way. The next morning, everything looked brighter. I walked in the garden. I hoped to see her again. But I didn't. The windows were closed. The little house was quiet. I looked and waited. Then I remembered something. My mother had asked the princess to visit our house. She was supposed to come today. With her daughter. I didn't want to look too excited. I didn't want anyone to know. But inside, I was full of hope. I tried to look normal. I wore my best clothes. Not too fancy, but clean. I combed my hair. I looked in the mirror. I didn't like what I saw. I was too thin. My face looked too young. I wanted to be a man. A man she could love. But I was still just a boy. I took a deep breath. I waited for the bell. At 1 o'clock, they came. The princess wore the same green dress. She walked slowly. Her face was tired. Her voice was loud. She began to talk to my mother about problems. Money. Letters. People she knew. She didn't stop talking. She took snuff. She laughed. Then she sighed. She was not shy. She was not quiet. She said everything she thought. My mother listened, but she looked bored. She said polite words. But I could see she didn't like the princess. My father sat and said nothing. And Zenaida? She sat straight in her chair. She wore a light blue dress. Her hair was long and soft. She didn't smile much today. Her face was calm. Her eyes were quiet. She looked different. Like a statue. She said little. She looked at my father sometimes. He looked back at her, but with careful eyes. I sat far from her. I wanted to speak. But I couldn't. She didn't look at me. My mother noticed this. After the visit, she spoke to my father. That girl is proud, she said. She acts like a queen. But they have no money. No name. They are not like us. My father said nothing. He just smiled. A cold smile. I didn't say anything. I went to my room. I felt sad. She didn't laugh. She didn't play. She didn't even say hello. Maybe she didn't remember me. Maybe yesterday meant nothing to her. Maybe I was just a child in her eyes. But then, something happened. As she was leaving, she passed by me. She stopped. She looked into my eyes. Her face was close. Her voice was soft. She said, "Come to our house tonight. At 8. Don't forget." She smiled. Just a little. Then she walked away. My heart jumped. My face became warm. I stood there. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Did she really say that? Did she want to see me again? I ran upstairs. I sat on my bed. I stared at the wall. The clock moved slowly. But inside me, everything was fast. I counted the hours. I counted the minutes. I didn't eat dinner. I didn't talk to anyone. I waited. When it was almost 8, I dressed again. My hands were shaking. I fixed my collar. I brushed my shoes. I looked at myself in the mirror. "You are not a boy," I whispered. "You are something more now." I walked to her house. My steps were fast, but my legs felt weak. I knocked on the door. The same old servant opened it. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just let me in. I heard voices inside. I heard laughter. I walked into the room, and there she was. Zenaida was standing on a chair. She was holding a hat. Around her were 5 men. Grown men. Strong men. She smiled. She laughed. She called my name. "Voldemar is here," she said. "He is our new guest. Give him a ticket." Everyone looked at me. I was red. I was shy, but I was also proud. She wanted me there. She called my name. She smiled at me. I didn't know what the game was. I didn't know the rules. But I was ready to play. I was ready to be near her. I was ready to step into her world. Because now, I had received the second invitation. And that, for me, was the real beginning of everything. Chapter 6. Red Wool and Silver Eyes. The night before was still in my heart. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Her smile. Her voice. Her laugh. The way she stood on the chair, full of life, with all those men around her. And yet, she called my name. She saw me. Out of all the people, she looked at me. My hands were cold, but my heart was warm. When I went to bed, I didn't sleep for a long time. I lay in the dark and watched the ceiling. I could hear the laughter in my ears. I could see her face with my eyes closed. It was a strange kind of happiness. A feeling that was too big for words, but too strong to hide. In the morning, everything felt different. The same house. The same room. But I was not the same. I looked at my face in the mirror. I didn't like my nose. I didn't like my hair. But then I thought of her again. She had seen me. She had spoken to me. That was enough. I dressed slowly. I brushed my hair 2 times. Then I sat down. I didn't want to go anywhere. I only wanted to think about her. Later that day, I was sent with a message. My mother had written a reply to the princess's visit. She asked me to take it next door. I didn't show my feelings. I said, "Yes, mother," and left. But inside, I was full of hope. Maybe I would see her again. Maybe she would speak to me again. Maybe she would smile. I knocked on the door. The servant opened it. He looked at me the same way as always. No smile, no words. Just a look. He pointed to the next room. I walked in quietly. The room was small and dark. The furniture was not clean. But I didn't care. I looked around. I listened. Then I heard her voice. She was sitting near the window. She had a skein of red wool in her hand. She looked at me and smiled. Not like the night before. This smile was quiet. This smile was personal. She said, "Come help me. I need someone to hold this." My feet moved without thinking. I sat across from her. She placed the wool in my hands. Soft red lines crossed between us. I was afraid to move. Her fingers worked quickly. She rolled the wool into a ball. Her hands touched the threads gently. The red color looked bright against her skin. Her eyes stayed down. But then, slowly, she looked up. Our eyes met. Her eyes were not just gray. They were silver, shining like water in the moonlight. I forgot how to breathe. She asked me questions. My name, my age, my favorite things. I answered with a small voice. But I watched her. Every word she said was like music. She didn't laugh this time. She spoke like she was thinking, like she wanted to know me. And when she looked at me, I felt like the only person in the world. She stopped rolling the wool for a moment. She looked at me and said, "You are 16. I am 21. That means I'm your big sister. You must listen to me." She smiled again. But it was not a joke. It was something else. Something soft. Something kind. She looked at me like I was young, but also important. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. I looked at her hands. They were small, but full of energy. She touched the wool, and the wool obeyed. She touched my heart, and my heart obeyed too. She looked into my eyes again. "Do you like me?" she asked. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were sharp. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't want to lie. "Yes," I said. "I do." She laughed. A soft laugh. Not loud like in the garden. Not playful like with the other men. This laugh was just for me. She leaned back and said, "Then we are friends. And you must always tell me the truth." I held the wool tighter. My hands were sweating. My heart was loud. I wanted to tell her more. I wanted to say everything. But I stayed quiet. I just looked at her face. Her eyes. Her lips. The small curve of her nose. I wanted to remember everything. I wanted to take a picture with my eyes and never forget it. We sat like that for a long time, talking a little, laughing a little. The red will pass between us. Thread by thread, word by word. My love was growing. Not loud, not wild, but deep and strong, like a river under the ground. I didn't know what she felt. I didn't know what she wanted. But I knew what I felt. I wanted her to smile again. I wanted her to look at me again. I wanted this moment to last forever. Chapter 7. The Kitten and the Soldier. The day after we rolled the red wool, I could not stop thinking about her hands. So light, so quick, and the way she looked at me when she said, "Then we are friends." I said yes, but in my heart, I wanted more. I didn't understand love before that moment. But now, I felt it growing inside me like a flower. Quiet but alive. Small but strong. Her eyes were still in my dreams. Her voice stayed in my ears. And her laugh, even when it was soft, was like music in my soul. I walked around the house with her name in my head. I said nothing to my parents. I ate quietly. I didn't want to talk about anything else. When evening came, I walked to her house again. I was not invited, but something pulled me there. I didn't need a reason. I just needed to be near her. I knocked softly. The door opened. I heard voices inside. And I heard her laugh, this time louder, full of joy. I stepped inside slowly, afraid and excited. My eyes looked around. The room was full of people again. Some I knew, some I didn't. But my eyes only looked for her. And then I saw her. She was kneeling on the floor. Her dress touched the carpet. Her head was down, but her face was full of wonder. Her hands were moving, careful and quick. And in front of her, on the floor, was a small kitten. Gray, soft, and shaking. The kitten was looking around like it didn't understand the world. She smiled at it. She touched its nose. So small, she said. So scared. So cute. I stood and watched her. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I only felt my heart open again. Next to her stood a man. Tall. Strong. A soldier. I had seen him before. His face was red. His eyes were bright. His boots were shining. He smiled like he had done something great. Zenaida looked up at him and said, "You remembered." He nodded proudly. "You said you wanted a kitten with big ears. So I found one." She laughed again and touched the kitten. Then she looked at me. Our eyes met. Just for a second. She smiled softly. But then she looked away. She played with the kitten. She gave it some milk. It drank slowly. Then it started to purr. Zenaida laughed. "Even animals love comfort," she said. The men in the room laughed with her. I did not. I was still watching. Still feeling something strange. A mix of joy and pain. Joy because she was happy. Pain because the soldier brought her the gift. Not me. The soldier bent down and said, "Now I want my reward." Zenaida looked up. "A reward?" she asked. He smiled and said, "Let me kiss your hand." She looked around the room. Everyone was watching. She didn't say no. She gave him her hand. He kissed it quickly. I felt cold inside. Not because of the kiss, but because she looked happy. I wanted to be the one who made her happy. She stood up and looked at all of us. Her face was full of light. "Everyone wants to bring me something," she said. "A kitten, a poem, a flower. But sometimes, just coming to see me is enough." She said it with a smile. But I wondered who those words were for. Maybe me. Maybe not. I didn't say much that evening. I stayed near the door. I watched the kitten sleep. I watched the soldier talk. I watched her face. I try not to show my feelings. But I think she knew. She always knew. When she walked past me, she whispered, "You are quiet today, M'sieu Voldemar." I looked up. I smiled. But I didn't answer. My heart was too full. I didn't trust my voice. That night, I went home and sat in the dark. I thought about the kitten. About her hands. About the way she looked at him. The soldier. Strong. Confident. A real man. I was not like him. I was young. I was nervous. I didn't have a gift to bring her. Only my heart. But I didn't know if that was enough. Still, I told myself, she spoke to me. She smiled at me. She remembered me. I held on to those moments like small treasures. I didn't want to lose them. I didn't know what the future would bring. But I knew one thing. I wanted to be close to her again. No matter what. And so, I waited for the next moment. The next smile. The next time she would look at me and say my name. Because every time she did, I felt more alive. Chapter 8. A new guest at dinner. The next morning was quiet. I didn't hear laughter from the house next door. No voices. No footsteps. The windows were closed. The air felt still. It was one of those days where everything waits. The trees don't move. The birds don't sing. Even the sky looks slow. I walked around the garden without a plan. I touched the flowers, but I didn't see them. I opened a book, but I didn't read the words. My heart was busy. My heart was asking questions. Why didn't she look at me more yesterday? Why did she smile more at the soldier? Did she still remember me? Or was I just one of many boys around her? When I came back inside, my mother was sitting in the front room. She was writing a letter. She looked at me and said, "The princess and her daughter are coming to dinner today." My heart jumped, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to show how much I cared. My mother added, "They are neighbors. It is polite to invite them. But that girl, she is proud." My mother didn't like Zinaida. I could see it in her face, in her voice, in the way she said that girl instead of her name. But I didn't care. Zinaida was coming to our house. I would see her again. I would hear her voice. I would sit near her at the table. That was enough for me. When the time came, I wore my best clothes. I stood in the hallway, trying not to look too ready. My hands were cold. My heart was loud. Then the bell rang. I held my breath. The door opened. I heard voices. I heard the soft steps of her shoes. And then I saw her. Zinaida walked into the room like a queen. But not a queen with a crown. A queen with quiet power. Her head was high. Her eyes looked at everything. She didn't smile too much. But she didn't look cold either. She looked calm, strong, beautiful. She wore a simple dress. But on her, it looked like something from a dream. Her hair was tied in a new way. Her hands were still. Her voice was low. She said hello to my mother. She nodded to my father. Then she looked at me. Only for a second. But that second was everything. We all sat at the table. The princess, her mother, spoke a lot. She talked about problems. About people who owed her money. About letters she had written. My mother smiled politely, but I could see her eyes were tired. My father said little. He listened. He gave small answers. But he was watching. Watching Zinaida. I saw it. And I think she saw it too. Zinaida didn't say much. She answered questions. She looked at the food. She moved her hands slowly. But something about her was different. She wasn't playful like before. She didn't make jokes. She didn't laugh loudly. She sat like a statue, alive, but distant. I wanted to speak to her. I wanted to make her smile. But I was afraid. I was afraid to say the wrong thing. I was afraid to lose the magic. My father asked her a question in French. She answered with perfect words. Her voice was soft, but sure. I looked at her in surprise. She was not just pretty. She was smart. She was strong. She was everything I was not. My mother washed her with cold eyes. My father washed her with curious eyes. I washed her with love. The dinner ended slowly. My mother stood. My father helped the princess with her shawl. I moved back, trying to find a chance to say something. But then it was too late. They were leaving. Zinaida walked to the door. I followed with my eyes. She passed by me. She didn't stop. She didn't speak. But then, just as she stepped out, she turned her head. She looked at me. And she whispered, "Come tonight. At 8. That small sentence hit my heart like lightning. It was soft. It was fast. But it burned into me. She still remembered. She still wanted me near. I stood there for a long time after she left. My mother was talking to my father. They didn't see me. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't know that one sentence had changed everything again. That night, I didn't wait until 8. I went early. I walked slowly. I knocked on the door. I was nervous, but I was ready. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew she wanted me there. That was enough. Because in a world full of doubts, that one small invitation felt like the greatest gift of all. Chapter 9. The Game of Love. That evening, the sky was soft with pink clouds and gold light. The birds were singing less, as if they too were getting ready for sleep. But my heart was not sleepy. It was running. It was wide awake. I walked to her house with quiet steps, but loud feelings. Her words were still echoing in my mind. Come tonight. At 8. That sentence was a light in my dark thoughts. It told me I was not forgotten. It told me I still had a place near her. When I knocked on the door, a servant opened it and let me in. The room inside was warm, with candlelight dancing on the walls. There were people there. Again. The usual group. The soldier. The poet. The doctor. A young man with a guitar. Zenaida sat in the middle, like always. But tonight, she was different. She was full of life again. Her eyes sparkled. Her laugh returned. It felt like summer had come back to her face. "Ah, here comes our young friend," she said when she saw me. I smiled and sat quietly. The others were talking, joking, telling stories. But I was only watching her. Every time she moved, I noticed. Every time she laughed, my heart lifted. She was like the sun. Everyone wanted her attention. Everyone wanted to be close. Then she clapped her hands. "Let's play a game," she said. Everyone turned to her. "Let's play a game of love." There was laughter, some nervous, some excited. "Each of you," she continued, "must tell what love means to you. But not with big words. Tell a small story, or say it in a joke, or a truth. But it must be real." One by one they spoke. The soldier said love was like a battle. You win or lose. The poet said love was a song you forget the words to. The doctor said love was a sickness without a cure. The guitar player sang a short melody. Then it was my turn. She looked at me, smiling. "And you, Monsieur Voldemar?" My mouth was dry. My hands were cold. But I spoke. "Love," I said, "is when you feel something in your chest that you can't explain, but you know it is true." Everyone was silent for a moment. Then someone laughed kindly. But Zenaida didn't laugh. She nodded. "That's a good answer," she said. She stood up and walked around the room slowly. "Love," she said, "is a game. But it's also serious. It plays with us, and sometimes we don't know the rules. Sometimes we think we are winning. But maybe we are not." The room was quiet again. Then she took a scarf and tied it around her eyes. "Let's play a new game," she said. "I will guess who is who just by touch." The men laughed, happy to play. She walked around, blindfolded. She touched someone's hand. "You are the poet," she said. She was right. She touched another. "You are the doctor." Again, correct. Then she came to me. My heart was beating like thunder. She touched my fingers gently. She stopped. "You are our young friend," she said. I smiled. She knew me even in the dark. When the game ended, she took off the scarf and looked at all of us. Her face was calm again. "Thank you for playing," she said. "Now go home. I'm tired." The others stood up. They thanked her. They left, one by one. But before I could leave, she stopped me with her eyes. She didn't speak. She just looked. And in that look, I felt something deep. It was not loud. It was not clear. But it was powerful. It told me she saw me. It told me I was not just a boy to her. I was something more. I walked home in the night air, feeling warm inside. I didn't know what was happening between us. But I knew something was there. Something real. Something strong. And maybe, just maybe, this game of love was starting to become something true. Chapter 10. Under the Same Scarf. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on my bed, eyes wide open, heart still full of the evening's light. The words from the game were still alive inside me. Love is a battle. Love is a sickness. Love is a game. But for me, love was none of those things. It was a scarf tied across my eyes, yet I still saw her. It was the way her hand found mine in the dark. It was the way she said my name without needing to speak it. That scarf was only a piece of cloth for others, but for me, it became the bridge between my dream and reality. The next day, I didn't go to the garden. I didn't walk in circles, waiting. I stayed in my room, quiet, thinking. My heart was afraid. afraid that it was all just a game to her, afraid that I was still only a boy in her eyes. But then, as if she could feel my fear from afar, there was a soft knock on the door. A letter, a small piece of paper, folded gently. No name on the outside. But I knew it was from her. Inside were just a few words. Come to the garden. I have something to show you. My hands shook as I read it. I rushed to the garden like a wind with no direction. She was there, near the rose bush, waiting. She wore a white dress. Her hair was tied back. She looked simple, but to me she looked like something from another world. She smiled when she saw me. Not her usual big smile. A soft one. A private one. A smile just for me. Do you remember the scarf? She asked. Yes, I said quietly. She took it from her pocket and held it out. Let's play again, she whispered. She tied it gently across my eyes. The world became dark. But in that darkness, I felt her hands. I felt her breath. I felt her near me, closer than ever. Now guess what I'm thinking, she said. I smiled. You're thinking I'm still a child. She laughed, soft and sweet. Rome, I'm thinking you're growing fast. I felt her fingers touch mine. Then she took my hand and placed it on her heart. Do you feel that? She asked. Her heart was beating fast. Like mine. Like we were two birds flying close together. This, she said, is not a game. I took off the scarf slowly. Our eyes met. The air around us felt still. Time was quiet. My voice was shaking when I asked, why me? Why not the others? They're older. Smarter. She looked at me, serious now. Because you see me like no one else does. They play. You feel. She sat down on the bench. I sat beside her. We didn't talk for a while. We just listened, to the wind in the trees, to the sounds of life all around. She looked at the sky and said, sometimes I'm scared too. You? I said, but you're so brave. She shook her head. I wear smiles like armor. But inside, I don't know everything. I make mistakes. I hurt people. I get lost. I wanted to say something smart, something strong, but I was quiet. Then I said, even if you get lost, I will still be here, in the same garden. She looked at me, eyes wet but not sad. You're not a child, Voldemar, she said softly. Not anymore. Then she leaned in and kissed my forehead. Just once. Just lightly. But it was enough to make my whole world shake. We sat under the same sky, under the same scarf, no longer playing. No longer guessing. Just being there. Together. And in that moment, I knew that love was not a game. It was a feeling that grew quietly, like a flower in the shade, slow and secret, but real. Chapter 11. A Long Night with Lightning. That night, the air felt heavy. The sky was full of gray clouds, and the wind had changed its voice. It was no longer soft. It whispered something sharp, like a warning. I stayed in my room, looking out the window. The trees moved fast. The world was waiting for something. And I was waiting for her. After what happened under the scarf, I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't rest. My chest was full of feelings I didn't know how to carry. Joy and fear. Hope and doubt. Her kiss on my forehead was still burning, like a candle that never went out. I closed my eyes and saw her smile. I opened them and saw lightning far away. The rain came suddenly. First just a few drops, then a storm. The wind hit the windows. Thunder spoke like an angry god. But inside me, there was a different kind of storm. I wanted to run. I wanted to see her again, even if just for 1 minute, even if only to say goodnight. I took my coat and went outside. My father's voice shouted behind me, but I didn't listen. My feet moved fast on the wet ground. The garden was dark and wild. Trees were dancing, leaves were flying, and I was there, alone, but not afraid. I reached her house, but the lights were off. Everything was quiet. My heart dropped. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she didn't want to see me again. Maybe it really was just a soft moment under a scarf and nothing more. But then, I saw a light in the window above. Just a small one, like a candle. I waited under the tree near the wall. I watched. The wind pushed against me, but I stayed. My clothes were wet, my hands were shaking. But I waited. Then something happened. The curtains moved. A face appeared. It was her. She looked down and saw me. Her eyes were tired, but they still held that soft fire. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. But she didn't turn away. She stood there, watching me, like I was a question she couldn't answer. Then lightning flashed. For 1 second, the sky became white. I saw her face clearly. She looked sad. The rain fell harder. And in that second, something changed in my heart. I realized I didn't understand her. Not really. I loved her, but I didn't know who she truly was. She was kind, but also distant. She gave me a kiss, but then walked away. She smiled, but carried pain. She was close, but also far. I wanted to save her. I wanted to be her world. But I was still just learning how big her world was. I was still just a boy standing in the rain, thinking love meant one thing, while she knew it meant many. The light in the window went out. She was gone, but I didn't move. I stayed under that tree for a long time, letting the storm speak, letting the water touch my skin, letting my heart learn how to feel without always needing answers. I walked home when the storm was quiet. The sky was still crying, but softer now. My shoes were full of mud. My coat was heavy, but something in me felt clean. I didn't knock on the door. I climbed through the window. I sat on my bed, cold and wet. But I didn't care. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, thinking. Not of games or kisses. Not of love songs or poetry. I thought of her eyes in the window. I thought of the sadness in her face. I thought of how love could be beautiful and confusing at the same time. I thought maybe that's what growing up meant. Learning that feelings don't always follow rules. That people can care for you, but still walk away. That sometimes the most powerful things in life happen in silence, during storms, when no one else is watching. And when the morning came, I was still awake. The birds were singing again. The clouds were running away. But I was not the same boy anymore. Something inside me had changed. Something deep. And I knew. I would never forget that long night with lightning. Chapter 12. A cold face, a secret look. The morning after the storm was full of sunshine, but I felt no warmth. My clothes were dry, my hair combed, my shoes clean, but my chest was still heavy. I walked through the garden slowly. The same flowers were there, the same smells, the same wind in the trees. But something was different. Something inside me had changed. I looked at every leaf, every petal, and asked myself, will she come today? But my heart whispered, don't expect too much. I sat on the old bench, the one near the roses. I waited. Time moved slow. My eyes watched the gate again and again. Every sound, every step made my heart jump. But she didn't come. I stayed until the sun climbed high. Then I went back to the house. But my heart stayed there, waiting without me. Later that day, my father said we were going to visit the neighbors again. I tried to act calm. I said, okay, without emotion. But inside, I was burning. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to ask her why she looked at me like that through the window, why her eyes were sad, why she disappeared into the night. We arrived at the house. The princess welcomed us. Her smile was sweet, but I looked past her. I searched for one face. And then I saw her. She stood at the end of the room, talking to someone older. She didn't look at me. Not even once. I stood there, frozen. I wanted to go to her. To say something. But I couldn't move. Finally, she turned. Just for a second. Her eyes met mine. But there was no smile. No warmth. Only silence. Cold. Like the morning frost. Then she looked away again. And continued talking like nothing had happened. That 1 second was enough to break something in me. I didn't understand. How could she be so far when she was so near? Dinner came. We sat around the table. The candles danced. The food was warm. People laughed and told stories. But I was not part of it. I was somewhere else. Stuck in that moment when she looked at me without feeling. My spoon touched my plate, but I tasted nothing. At one point, she said something that made others laugh. She smiled, wide and bright. But it wasn't the smile she gave me in the garden. That one was gone. I watched her laugh with others. I watched her speak softly to an older man. I watched her eyes shine for someone else. And I knew something was slipping away from me. After dinner, I walked alone in the hallway. My mind was loud. My heart was loud. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I turned a corner, and there she was. Alone, looking out the window. The same window from last night. I stepped closer. "Hello," I said. She turned slowly. "Hello." Her voice was calm, like I was a stranger. "I waited for you today," I said. She looked at me, her face still. "Why?" "Because of yesterday," I whispered. She sighed. Yesterday was just a moment. My hands felt cold. My voice cracked. But it meant something to me. She looked away. "You're sweet, Voldemar. But you are still learning what love really is." "I'm learning," I said. "But not because of books. Because of you." She touched my hand gently. "Don't hurt yourself for me." "Too late," I said. She gave me one last look. That look stayed with me forever. It had love. It had pain. It had a secret she wouldn't tell. A secret I didn't know how to ask about. And then she walked away. That night, I walked home slowly. The stars were above, but I didn't look at them. I looked down, at my shoes, at the road, at the shadow I was becoming. I knew I still loved her. But I also knew love could be quiet. Love could be one look that says everything and nothing. Love could be a cold face that once held warmth. The secret look that never speaks again. And that's when I learned. Sometimes, love doesn't end in goodbye. It ends in silence. Chapter 13. A Ride, a Bow of Fear. The days after that silent moment felt longer than any season. I walked the garden as usual, but I no longer expected to see her. I watched the trees and listened to the birds, but they sounded different now. I still went through the same routines, reading, walking, smiling at guests, but my heart was somewhere else. It was back in that hallway where she looked at me and said, "You are still learning what love really is." I didn't want to learn. I wanted to feel, to believe, to hope. But her eyes had told me a truth I wasn't ready for. One afternoon, I heard the sound of horses outside. I looked through the window and saw a carriage. A man in a dark coat stood near it, talking to the princess and her. She was laughing. Her hair moved with the wind. Her hands held the side of the carriage. And the man, he was not young, but not old. Strong shoulders, confident face. The kind of man who doesn't need to speak to be noticed. My father stood beside me and smiled. "That's Count Malevsky," he said. "He's close to the princess. A regular guest." I didn't answer. My eyes were on her. Her dress was blue that day, and the color made her look even more beautiful. Or maybe it was just my imagination making her shine brighter, even as she faded from my world. The man helped her into the carriage. Then he looked back and saw me watching. He gave a little bow, more of a joke than respect, and she followed his eyes. For a brief moment, our gazes touched again. But this time, hers was different. No sadness, no warmth, just something unreadable, like a curtain had been pulled between us. Then she turned her head, laughed at something the man said, and the carriage began to move. I stood frozen, my fingers against the glass. I wanted to run after them. I wanted to stop the horses and ask her why she smiled at him like that, why she looked through me. But I didn't move. I just stood there, quiet and stiff, like a painting of someone forgotten. That night, I sat in my room for hours. I tried to write in my notebook, but the words made no sense. I tore the page out. I stared at the ceiling. I stared at my hands. They were shaking, not from cold, but from something I didn't understand then, fear. A kind of fear that rises when you know someone is walking out of your life, and you can't stop them. The next day, I saw her again in the garden. She was alone. The air was soft, the sky clear. I walked up to her slowly. She turned and smiled. Not the warm one, not the secret one, but a polite one, like people give to strangers at a shop. "Are you writing again today?" I asked. "Maybe," she said. "It depends on the count." I felt the word count strike me like a stone. "You enjoy his company?" She looked at me, surprised. "He's kind. And interesting." I swallowed hard. "Do you love him?" She laughed, gently. "You're too young to ask such things." "But I feel something," I said. "Isn't that enough?" She touched my arm. "Feelings are beautiful, Voldemar. But they don't always lead where we want." "Then why give them?" I asked, my voice suddenly louder. She looked at me, serious now. "Because sometimes, we just want to feel alive." I didn't understand her then. I wanted answers, but all she gave me were puzzles. She walked away again, and I didn't follow. My legs wouldn't move. My heart was too full. And for the first time, I was afraid, not of losing her, but of not understanding her at all. That evening, I saw the Count again. He tipped his hat to me with that same smile, the one that wasn't really friendly. I nodded, but inside I was burning. I watched them ride together, her hair flying, her laughter light in the air. And I stood there, a boy holding too many questions, afraid of the answers. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, listening to the wind, asking it the same question over and over. Why does she smile more when she's with him? And the wind didn't answer. It only whispered things I didn't understand. But deep inside, I knew something was changing. I was learning that love wasn't always soft. Sometimes it felt like fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of not being enough. Fear of the truth that love could walk past you and not look back. Chapter 14. The Princess and the Prisoner. The next morning, the house felt quieter than usual. Maybe it was just my thoughts making everything feel far away, or maybe the silence was real. I walked slowly down the hallway and stopped at the window, the same window where I once saw her through the glass on that stormy night. The sky was gray now, not heavy with rain, but still and soft, like a blanket pulled over everything. I touched the cold glass with my fingertips and remembered her hand brushing mine, her laughter in the garden, her eyes looking at someone else. My heart felt heavier than ever, and yet I couldn't stop hoping she might appear again, just once more, with that smile meant only for me. In the afternoon, I walked into the drawing room and found the princess sitting on her velvet chair. She was reading a letter and looked tired. The light from the window made the silver in her hair shine like frost. She looked up when I entered and gave me a small nod. "Come here, young man," she said. I walked to her like a child walking to a teacher. "Tell me," she asked, "what is happening in your heart these days?" Her voice was calm, but I felt like she already knew the answer. I looked down. "I don't know," I said. "I feel many things, but none of them make sense." She smiled gently. "Ah, that is how the heart begins to grow." She folded the letter and placed it on the table beside her. Then she looked out the window, thoughtful. "Do you know," she said, "what it means to love someone who doesn't belong to you?" I didn't answer, but I felt the question like a weight on my chest. "Zenaida," she whispered, "has a strong spirit, but she is still a prisoner." "A prisoner?" I asked. "She's free. She can go wherever she wants." The princess looked at me, her eyes full of something I didn't yet understand. "Not all prisons have walls, my dear boy. Sometimes the strongest chains are invisible." I stood quietly, unsure if I should ask what she meant. But before I could speak again, she motioned me closer. "She is clever, your Zenaida. She plays many games. Not just with you, with herself, with the world." I sat beside her, heart racing. "Does she love the count?" The princess sighed. "Love? That's a heavy word for a girl like her. Maybe she dreams of it. Maybe she fears it. Or maybe she's simply trying to survive in her own way." I wanted to defend Zenaida. I wanted to say she was kind, beautiful, and real. But the words stayed in my mouth. Somewhere deep inside, I was beginning to see what the princess meant. Zenaida was not just a girl in a garden. She was a storm of feelings, a mystery I could never solve, a fire that both warmed and burned. Later that evening, I saw her again. She was sitting on a bench under the tree, the same tree where we once shared stories and laughter. She was alone, her eyes on the ground. I walked up to her, and she looked at me slowly. "You came," she said. "I always come," I said quietly. She smiled, but it was not the bright smile I remembered. It was tired, distant. "Sometimes I wish you wouldn't," she said. "Because you still believe." I sat beside her. "What else can I do?" She didn't answer right away. She looked up at the sky, and then back at me. "Do you think I'm a good person, Voldemar?" The question surprised me. "Yes," I said. "I think you're kind." She laughed, but there was sadness in it. "Kind? I hurt people without meaning to." "You never hurt me," I said. She turned her head. "Haven't I?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her that every word, every look, even every goodbye was still beautiful to me. But the truth was already clear in her eyes. She was a prisoner of her feelings, of her fears, of something I couldn't see. And maybe I was her prisoner too. "I don't want to lose you," I whispered. She touched my hand softly. "You never had me." The words hit like ice. But she said them with so much care that they didn't feel cruel. They felt like truth, the kind that breaks and heals at the same time. She leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Then she stood up and walked away slowly, her dress moving like water in the wind. That night, I didn't cry. I just lay in my bed and looked at the ceiling. I saw stars that weren't there. I heard her voice in my mind. I felt her hand still holding mine. And I realized she had never belonged to anyone. Not the Count, not me, not even herself. Zenaida was the kind of person who left a mark you could never wash away. And maybe that was her prison. And mine too. Chapter 15, The Garden Talk. The garden had changed. The flowers were still there, but they didn't smell the same. The grass was green, but it didn't feel soft under my shoes anymore. Everything looked as it was before, but something inside me had shifted. I walked the path where we once played the kitten game, where we laughed under the trees and shared secrets that now felt like dreams. I kept looking at the bench where she often sat, hoping to see her again. And one afternoon, she was there, quiet, alone, almost as if waiting for me. I walked to her slowly. She didn't look up at first. She just stared at the little patch of earth beneath the tree, where some petals had fallen. Her dress was simple, pale, with a soft blue ribbon in her hair. I said nothing for a while. Then I sat beside her. The silence between us was heavy, but not cold. It was the kind of silence that carries all the words we were too afraid to say. Finally, she turned to me, her voice soft like the wind in the leaves. "You came again." "I always come," I said. She smiled. "Even when you know I'll break your heart." I looked at her. Her eyes were tired, not sleepy, but full of questions and memories and maybe pain. "Maybe that's what love is," I said. "Coming back, even when it hurts." She didn't answer. Instead, she picked up a fallen flower and held it between her fingers. "Do you know," she said, "when I was a child, I thought flowers could talk." "And what did they say?" I asked. "They said I was free, that I could fly, laugh, do anything. But now, they only whisper things I don't want to hear." I felt something in my chest. A sadness not for me, but for her. I realized that her laughter, her games, her stories, maybe all of it was to cover something deeper. Something she couldn't show. "You don't look happy," I said. She laughed softly. "That's because I'm not." I didn't expect that answer. It was honest, too honest. I looked down. "Can I help?" She looked at me, really looked, with eyes that saw through me. "You already do, just by being here. But you can't change what I am." "What are you?" "I'm someone who's still searching. For something. Maybe love, maybe peace. I don't even know." We sat together in silence. The wind played with her ribbon. I washed her hands, her eyes, the way she breathed slowly like she was trying to hold something inside. Then she turned to me again. "Do you remember the first time we met?" "Yes. You were laughing. And you were staring," she said with a smile. "I didn't know then," I whispered, "that you'd become the most important part of my life." She didn't smile this time. She looked at me seriously. "And what if I told you I never asked for that?" "I know," I said. "You didn't. But I still gave it." She stood up slowly and walked a few steps, then turned back to me. "You're a good boy, Voldemar. Too good for someone like me." "Why do you say that?" "Because I don't know how to be still. My heart moves like the wind. One day I think I love, and the next I'm unsure. I hurt people, not because I want to, but because I don't know how not to." I stood too. My heart was beating fast. "Then let me wait. Let me be here. Let me learn with you." She shook her head. "No, because someday I'll be gone. And I don't want you to wait for someone who doesn't stay." The sky above us turned golden with the setting sun. The trees looked like shadows against the light. She stepped closer and touched my face. "I wish I met you when I was different. Maybe then, we could have had something." Tears came to my eyes. But I didn't cry. I just looked at her, trying to memorize her face, her voice, everything. She leaned forward and kissed my forehead. Goodbye for now. Then she walked away slowly, not looking back. I stood in the garden until it got dark, until the moon came, until the stars looked like little hopes in the sky. I thought about everything she said. I didn't know if I would see her again. I didn't know if my heart would ever feel the same. But I knew one thing. That moment, that talk in the garden, was real, and I would carry it with me forever. Chapter 16. The Poem and the Glance. The next few days passed slowly, as if time itself had become shy. I walked through the same paths, heard the same birds, saw the same sky, but everything felt different. Her absence was not loud. It was quiet, like the sound of a closed door in the middle of the night. But it was everywhere. I could feel it in my chest, in the corners of the rooms she once filled with her laughter. I didn't see her in the garden. I didn't hear her voice floating through the air. Even the others in the house seemed to speak less, as if some invisible cloud had passed over us. I stayed in my room most of the time, trying to understand what was happening inside me. It wasn't sadness exactly. It wasn't anger. It was something in between, a kind of gentle ache that refused to go away. One afternoon, I found an old notebook on my shelf. It was a gift from my mother, given to me months ago, back when I thought the world was simple. I opened it slowly, and my eyes landed on a blank page. Without thinking, I picked up my pen, and I began to write. Not a letter, not a story, but a poem about her smile that made me forget where I was, about her voice that danced in the air like a song only I could hear, about her eyes, those eyes that never stayed in one place, always looking beyond the moment, beyond the room, beyond me. The words came like rain, soft and endless. I didn't stop to think. I didn't stop to edit. I just wrote, line after line, feeling after feeling. When I finished, I looked at the paper and saw something I never expected, my heart written out loud. I folded the page and held it in my hand. My fingers shook. I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to give it to her. But I didn't know how. I didn't know if I should. Maybe she wouldn't care. Maybe she would laugh. Maybe she wouldn't even read it. But I couldn't keep it. It didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to her. That evening, I walked quietly to the house next door. I saw the maid by the gate and gave her the paper. Please, I said, give this to her. Don't say who it's from. The maid nodded with a soft smile, and I walked away quickly before I changed my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I imagined her reading the poem. I imagined her smile, or maybe her tears. I imagined everything. And in the middle of all that imagining, I heard a soft sound, like footsteps. I sat up. The moonlight poured into the room like silver water. I looked toward the window, and there she was. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just looked at me through the glass. Her eyes were full of something I couldn't name. They weren't happy, but they weren't sad either. They were deep. They were tired. And they were looking only at me. We stayed like that for a long time. Two people on different sides of the window, holding on to a moment that didn't need words. I didn't know what she felt. I didn't know if the poem touched her, or hurt her, or made her remember. But in that glance, I saw everything I needed to know. She knew. She understood. And maybe, for just 1 second, she felt what I felt too. Then she turned and disappeared into the night. I didn't run after her. I didn't knock on her door. I just sat by the window for hours, feeling the cool air on my face, listening to the quiet world, holding that moment in my heart like a secret treasure. The next morning, I went to the garden again. The wind moved the leaves gently. I walked to the bench and sat down. Under the bench, I saw something. A single flower, wrapped in a piece of ribbon, the same blue ribbon she wore in her hair. I picked it up with both hands and closed my eyes. She had answered, not with a letter, not with a voice, but with a gesture, a flower, a ribbon, a memory, and that was enough. Chapter 17. The Doctor's Warning. It was late summer now. The days were shorter, the shadows longer, and the nights had a quiet chill that made you want to sit closer to the fire, even if the fire was just a memory. Everything around me seemed to change slowly, but inside, things were moving fast. I began to feel a heaviness I couldn't explain. Something inside me told me that something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to think that the girl I had written poems for, the girl who once ran through the garden with a kitten in her arms, was changing too, and not in a beautiful way. She smiled less. She appeared less often, and when she did appear, her laughter felt like it was coming from far away, not from her heart, but from some other place she kept hidden. One morning, I saw her walking in the garden with an older man I hadn't seen before. He was not young, but he was not very old either. He wore dark clothes and carried a small black bag in his hand. His face was serious, his eyes sharp and watchful. I didn't speak to him, but I watched from the window as they sat on the bench. She spoke slowly. He listened, nodded, and sometimes took her hand gently as if to feel her pulse. My heart beat fast. Was he a doctor? Was she sick? My mind ran in 100 directions, each one darker than the last. I had to know. I had to understand what was happening. Later that day, I waited near the gate, pretending to read a book. When the man came out, I greeted him politely. He stopped and looked at me for a moment, then smiled, not coldly, but with care. "You are a friend of the family?" he asked. I nodded quickly. "Yes, I know the princess, a little." He paused. Then he said softly, "Sometimes, knowing a little can be harder than knowing everything." I didn't understand what he meant. So I asked, "Is she all right?" The man looked at the trees for a long time, then back at me. His eyes had something in them I didn't like, kindness mixed with sadness. "She's strong," he said, "but strength is not always enough." I asked again, more seriously, "Is she sick?" He nodded slowly. "She needs rest. Peace. A heart like hers carries many weights, even the invisible ones." "You care for her?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Then don't ask too many questions," he replied gently. "Just be near. That is sometimes the best medicine." And with that, he walked away. I stood by the gate long after he had gone. My heart was beating like a drum. A strange fear settled inside me. A fear of losing something I didn't even fully have. I wanted to run to her and ask what was wrong. I wanted to hold her hand and say, "Don't go anywhere. Stay. Just stay." But I didn't. I stayed where I was, holding the silence like a stone in my chest. That evening, I saw her again. She was walking slowly in the garden, touching the leaves as if saying goodbye. I walked toward her, and she turned before I said anything. Her face was pale, but her smile was calm. "I saw the doctor," I said. She nodded. "Yes, he's kind." "Is something wrong?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "Life is not always about answers. Sometimes it's about accepting what you don't know. Do you want to go away?" I asked her softly. She didn't answer with words. She reached out and touched my arm. Her fingers were cold. "Don't be sad," she said. "We all leave something behind. But we also take something with us." "What will you take?" I asked. She smiled gently. "Your eyes." And then she walked away again. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to the wind whisper through the windows. The doctor's words echoed in my head. Her hands, her voice, her smile. All of it felt like a story that was reaching its end. But I wasn't ready for the last page. I wanted more chapters, more walks, more silences, more poems. But sometimes, life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just moves forward. And all you can do is follow, heart open, eyes full, and hands still warm from the touch of someone you may never forget. Chapter 18. I know now. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. I went outside, I ate my meals, I heard people talking, but none of it stayed with me. Everything seemed to pass through me like wine through thin cloth. I kept looking for her in the garden, hoping for one more glance, one more smile, one more shared silence. But she didn't come. The house next door was quiet. The windows were shut, and the scent of her perfume no longer floated through the summer air. I felt like I was chasing a ghost, and maybe in a way, I was. I didn't want to believe she was gone, not yet. I kept holding on to the idea that she would return, walk through the grass with that half-smile on her face, and say something that made no sense, but somehow made everything feel better. I didn't want to say goodbye. I didn't know how. One morning, I walked past her house and saw something strange. The curtains were all open. The front door was wide, and two men were carrying a large trunk down the steps. Her maid stood nearby, wiping her eyes with a cloth. I froze. My heart knew before my mind could speak. She was leaving. No goodbye, no explanation. Just like that, gone. I walked quickly to the gate, hoping to find someone, anyone who could give me answers. The maid saw me and nodded slowly. She didn't speak, but her eyes were kind. I asked where the princess had gone. The maid looked away and said softly, "To rest." Far away. The doctor said she needs quiet, peace, no visitors. I stood still, trying not to let my face show everything I felt. My world had tilted. I had imagined 100 ways our story would change. But I never imagined it would just end. I turned and walked away, slowly, my steps heavy. I didn't know where to go. I wandered through the streets for hours, not really seeing anything. Every bench reminded me of her. Every flower, every tree, every soft breeze that touched my face. Everything whispered her name, as if the world itself was teasing me. When I came home that night, I went to my room and sat at my desk. The poem I wrote her was still there, folded neatly in a drawer. I took it out and read it again. The words felt different now. They felt like part of another life. A life that was warm and confusing and beautiful. A life that was now just memory. I placed the poem back and closed the drawer. That evening, my father knocked on my door. He had a letter in his hand. "This came for you," he said. I opened it slowly. It was not from her. It was from her aunt. A short note. She asked me to tell you thank you. For your words. For your eyes. She remembers you kindly. I read the note 3 times. I held it to my chest. And in that moment, I knew something for sure. I knew that I loved her. Not the way you love a book or a song or even a friend. I loved her with the part of me that didn't know how to explain things. With the part of me that hurt when I saw her hurting. With the part of me that smiled when she smiled. I didn't know if she loved me too. Maybe not. But it didn't matter anymore. I had felt something real. And even if she was far away, Even if I never saw her again, that feeling would always be mine. No one could take it. I went to the garden one last time that summer. I sat on the bench where we once talked. The sun was low, the sky painted with pink and orange. A bird sang softly from a nearby tree. I closed my eyes and remembered everything. The red wool, the kitten, the scarf, the secret glance through the window, the flower under the bench, and the way she said, "Your eyes." I opened my eyes and smiled. I didn't have answers, but I had understanding. I didn't have her, but I had love. I knew now. Chapter 19. The Silent Discovery. The season began to change. The air grew cooler, the leaves turned gold and red, and the sun didn't stay as long in the sky. Life around me moved forward. People smiled, worked, talked, laughed. But something inside me had changed. I was not the same boy who once watched a girl laugh under a tree or played word games with her in the garden. That boy still lived in me, but he now had something new, an ache that didn't hurt, but didn't leave. And in that silence, something else started to grow. Not pain, not joy, just understanding. One day, my father came home earlier than usual. He looked tired, but in a strange way, like someone carrying a thought too heavy to share. He sat in his chair without saying much. I tried to talk to him, but he only gave short answers. He wasn't angry, just far away, lost in his own mind. I watched him closely. I began to wonder if he too was carrying something inside, some secret feeling, some silent story that he could never say out loud. The next morning, something happened that changed everything for me. I went into my father's study to look for a book. On the desk, I saw an envelope. It had no name on it, just sealed and placed neatly, as if waiting for someone. I should not have touched it, but something in me moved my hand. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, written in beautiful handwriting. I didn't want to read it, but my eyes moved anyway. It was her handwriting, and the letter was not to me. It was to my father. I froze. My hands trembled. I read a few lines. Enough to understand everything. Enough to see what had been invisible all along. She had loved him. Not me. My father. All the late visits. All the quiet walks. All the glances between them that I didn't understand. Now they made sense. My mind screamed. I wanted to tear the letter apart, but I couldn't move. My breath slowed. My heart beat hard, then soft, then disappeared into a silence I had never known before. I put the letter back and walked out of the room. My legs were weak. I sat in the hallway, leaning against the wall. My eyes were dry. No tears came, just silence. Not the kind of silence that is peaceful, but the kind that is too loud to ignore. A truth had been given to me, not as a gift, but as a weight. A heavy, invisible weight that sat on my chest. I didn't feel hate, not even jealousy, just deep, deep sadness. For me, for her, for my father, for the story that I thought was mine, but never truly was. That evening, I looked at my father again, and I saw him, really saw him, the sadness in his eyes, the way he looked at the window, as if someone might appear, the way he didn't speak much anymore. He had loved her too, but his love was a secret, just like mine. Maybe they had shared something, maybe not. I would never know the full truth, but I knew enough now. I had discovered something that changed everything, not through words, not through a confession, but through silence. A quiet, heavy silence that stayed with me, followed me, and became part of me. I went back to my room and lay on my bed. I stared at the ceiling and tried to remember her face. But now it looked different. Softer, sadder, more distant, as if it had already faded into memory. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just listened to the sound of my own heart. And in that quiet room, I understood something new. First love is not always sweet. Sometimes it teaches you more through pain than through joy. Sometimes it shows you that feelings can be strong, but stories can still end in silence. But even in that silence, you grow. Chapter 20, A Final Smile. Time passed, but it did not ask me how I felt. The world moved on, step by step, without waiting. Leaves fell from trees, streets turned cold, and people prepared for winter. And I, too, began to move forward, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Life doesn't give you the choice to stand still forever. Even with a heavy heart, you walk. Even with questions that have no answers, you breathe. I began to return to my books, my routines, my small daily habits. But something had changed inside me. I was no longer just a boy learning poems and looking at flowers with innocent wonder. I was someone who had felt the joy and confusion of love and the deep silence that often follows it. I didn't visit the house next door anymore. I avoided it. It stood quiet and closed, like a chapter that had been written and now belonged to the past. One day, I heard it had been sold. The new family brought children, noise, and music. But I didn't want to meet them. I didn't want to hear new laughter in a place that still held the sound of her voice in my memory. Sometimes I stood near the gate, pretending to look at something else, but my heart always looked for her face in the window, her shadow behind the curtain. Of course, I never saw her again. But then, one early morning, something unexpected happened. I received a letter. Not from her, but about her. It was short. It simply said that she had passed away. The message was kind. It said she had not suffered, that she had smiled the last time someone spoke her name, that she had kept certain letters with her until the end. My hands held the paper tightly. My body didn't move. I didn't know what to feel. Was it sadness? Was it love? Was it something in between that had no name? I walked to the garden and sat under the same tree where we once spoke. The same place where she touched a flower and smiled at nothing in particular. The same place where my heart had learned to beat in a new way. I closed my eyes and remembered her laugh. I remembered the scarf we shared, the way she gave me a flower without a word, the way she looked at me like she saw something more. I thought about how much I had not understood then. I thought about how much I still didn't understand now. But even with all that, I didn't feel regret. Not really. Because there are some feelings that are true, even if they are short. There are some people who stay with you forever, even if they only walk beside you for a little while. And as I sat there, alone with the wind in my thoughts, I felt something surprising. Not pain, not happiness, but peace, as if everything that had happened was exactly how it was meant to be. I opened my eyes and smiled. A small smile. A quiet smile. The kind of smile that comes not from laughter, but from deep knowing. I had loved. I had learned. And even though I had lost, I had been given something precious. Love, especially the first one, doesn't always give you forever, but it gives you a story, a moment, a change, and that's enough. That's more than enough. Chapter 21, Years Later. Years passed like water through fingers. I grew taller. I grew older. My voice changed. My eyes matured. And the world began to see me not as a boy, but as a man. People came and went. Some left quickly. Others stayed for a while. But no one truly knew what lived quietly inside me. The memory of her, the summer days, the laughter between two garden trees, the scarf we shared, the words we never said. Life brought new dreams, new struggles, new people, even new loves. But none of them erased the first. They only added to the story of who I became. Sometimes, during quiet evenings, I would walk through the same streets where I once waited for her. The city had changed. New buildings stood where old ones once leaned. The flowers were different, and even the air seemed to carry a new rhythm. But the memories did not change. They lived untouched in the deepest room of my heart, like an old book I never opened but never forgot. I never told anyone the full story, not because I was ashamed, but because some stories are not for sharing. Some feelings are too soft to be spoken out loud. They are like music that only plays in silence. One autumn, many years later, I was invited to an event in another town. It was a meeting of old families, people who once knew each other when the world was different. I sat quietly among them, listening to their stories, nodding politely, sipping warm tea. Then a woman approached me. She was older, kind-eyed, and gentle in her tone. She said she had known the princess. She used her name softly, like a feather falling on water. She told me things I didn't know. That the princess used to smile when she talked about the past. That she had kept something in a small box, something private. Inside the box were letters and a pressed flower. A red one. My heart paused. I looked down. I didn't need to ask. I already knew what flower it was. I had given it to her once, trembling, afraid, not knowing if it meant anything. And she had kept it. All those years. Through all her journeys, all her days, she had kept that tiny red flower. It was like hearing the wind whisper something I had waited a lifetime to know. Maybe she had loved me in her own quiet way. Maybe not like I loved her. But love wears many faces. And sometimes, even a single flower can hold a world of feeling. That night, I walked under the stars alone. I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel sad. I felt grateful. Because to love someone truly, even just once, is a gift. To be loved, even just for a moment, is enough to carry through 1,000 lonely days. I thought about the boy I used to be. Full of wonder, full of fear, full of questions. I smiled at him. I forgave him. I thanked him. Because that boy made me who I am now. And even if the world forgot her name, I never would. The first love never comes back. But it never leaves either. It just changes shape. It becomes a part of your voice, your silence, your dreams, your heart. It teaches you not just how to love, but how to live. Chapter 22. What First Love Taught Me. First love is not just a memory. It is a teacher. It doesn't arrive to give you everything you want. It comes to show you who you are. It touches you gently, then leaves quietly, but it leaves behind something you will carry for the rest of your life. Not a wound, not always joy, but a kind of wisdom that no book can teach. I used to think love was only about smiles, sweet words, soft hands. But I learned it is also about silence, waiting, growing, and letting go. My first love didn't end the way stories in books end. She didn't become my wife. We didn't grow old together. We didn't even say goodbye. But her presence in my life, short as it was, taught me more than years of living without her ever could. She taught me how powerful a glance can be, how one moment can stay in your heart forever, how someone can speak to you without saying a word, and how sometimes the things we don't understand in the moment are the ones that shape us the most. I remember her laugh. I remember the way her eyes lit up, when she teased me. I remember the cold evening when she gave me her scarf. I remember the warm garden where we shared a flower. All these little things, so small, but they made me feel something big. And that's the magic of first love. It starts small, but becomes something endless inside you. Over time, I learned to live with the memory. I stopped hoping to meet her again. I stopped searching for her face in the crowd. But I never stopped being grateful. She helped me understand that love is not about owning someone. It's not about always being with them. Love, real love, is about what you become because of them. It's about the part of you that wakes up and grows when they walk into your life. And even if they walk out, that part of you stays alive. That's how I carried her with me. Not in photos, not in letters, but in the way I saw the world after her. I noticed more. I listened better. I spoke softer. I loved deeper. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. First love doesn't come to give you forever. It comes to show you what forever feels like, just for a moment, so you can recognize it again if it ever comes back. It teaches you the weight of a heart, the joy of a smile, the ache of a goodbye. And once you've felt all that, you are never the same again. You walk through the world differently because you have loved once, and that changes everything. To anyone watching this who has felt the ache of first love, or the confusion, or the sweetness, you are not alone. You are part of a quiet story that many hearts carry. And that story is beautiful, even if it ended with silence. So don't be afraid to remember. Don't be afraid to feel. Let that memory guide you, not haunt you. Let it remind you that you can love. You did love. And that means, one day, you will love again. Thank you for watching this story with me. If this video touched your heart, if you remembered someone while listening, write in the comments. I still carry that love. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and come back for more emotional English stories that help you learn and grow. Your English journey is not just about words. It's about feeling, living, and becoming stronger with every story. See you in the next video, my friend.